Greensleeves is an instantly recognizable tune, even today, 450 years after it was first written, and subsequently rewritten and rewritten. But what many don't know is that the original song was comprised of 18 verses, each narrating, sometimes in great detail and other times frustratingly vague, a nearly complete outfit systematically given to Lady Greensleeves by her pursuer, which, for a woman of the 1580s, is a lot of stuff. But this song is really unique because it gives us a pretty cool picture of what a relatively well-off woman of this period would have been wearing from the skin out, which is not something we get to see just by looking at paintings and statues from this period. Although whether she was well off herself or a humbler woman, disinterested or smug in her pursuer's ostentatious display of affection, there's still a lot to be left to the imagination. Regardless of social class, every Tudor woman starts off with a smock, or the linen base layer that sits against the skin. This serves several purposes: to keep the body comfortable under the rest of the clothing, preventing chafing and wicking away sweat, as well as protecting the more expensive outer layers from coming into contact with the skin. Also integral to the Tudor woman is a kerchief, or the linen cap worn on the head. This one has been intricately wrought with whitework embroidery, and like the smock, the absorbency of the linen may have helped to wick up oils to help keep the hair feeling nice and clean. Linen is a highly absorbent and hard-wearing fiber, so perfect for keeping the skin feeling clean and dry and being easily washable, unlike the silks and wools worn on top, which were rarely, if ever, washed with water. This particular smock isn't just normal underwear, however. Quote, with gold embroidered gorgeously. The addition of the intricate blackwork and the gold spangles on the sleeves adds a couple hundred labor hours to this garment, making it a garment fit for a lady of position. Crimson stockings, all of silk, are certainly a step up from the more standard wool knitted or cloth stockings most common during this period across all social classes. Silk stockings would be much finer due to the finer nature of the fibers themselves, but so much costlier. Queen Elizabeth I herself only just got her first pair of silk stockings in 1560, around 20 years before Lady Greensleeves would have received hers, and loved them so much she declared that she, quote, will wear no more cloth stockings. While knitted and cloth stockings alike do include some amount of stretch due to either being knit or cut on the bias of the fabric, alas, we are still in a pre-elastic era, so the garters were essential to keep the stockings from slipping down and are tied just below the knee. Our Lady will want to finish the bending tasks before donning the stiffer upper body layers, so the next item to go on are the pumps as white as was the milk. Bright white leather would have been made by tawing it with a paste of alum, salt, flour, and eggs. The softness of these shoes makes them very much suited to indoor wear. When heading for a walk outdoors, she would slip on a pair of protective pattens, or wooden soles to preserve the soft leather. Now for the petticoat of the best, otherwise called a bodiced petticoat or a kirtle. This layer acts both as a structure and as a layer of warmth, being made of wool and the bodice made of several layers of stiffened linen. And it's spiral laced at the sides with some silk loop manipulated laces. This late Tudor period predates the corset. We only know of one surviving pair of bodies, as it was called in the period, which is a corset-like garment from the late 16th century. They're thought only to have worn by the very upper classes of women who were seeking a very specific fashionable upper body shape. So this stiff-bodiced kirtle is the precursor to the more widespread everyday stays and corsets that gained prevalence in the mid-17th century onward. Red is also one of the most popular colors for petticoats, referenced in inventories and wills from this period.
Okay. Yeah.
Although we don't explicitly have mention of Lady Greensleeves being given a bum roll, this is nonetheless an essential part of the fashionable Tudor woman's silhouette. We don't have much evidence as to what these looked like, but current theories propose either a stuffed roll that could be tied around the waist, stuffed with wool or horsehair or sundry such scrap materials, or perhaps a tube formed with strips of whalebone, like the one we've estimated here. This is hooked onto the front peak of the kirtle so that it's held just below the waistline, adding fullness to the upper hip instead of crowding at the waist. A petticoat of sendal right is an overpetticoat made from a nicer and more costly silk. This one is likely to be seen under the gown, so is made from finer materials, but its main purpose is to smooth over the bum roll so no harsh structural shapes are seen under the main gown. And now for the long-awaited gown of glossy green, with sleeves of satin hanging by. Lyrics which give us two very important clues: that the green of which the gown is made is a satin, and the sleeves of which are hanging sleeves. There are plenty of examples of gowns of this style evidenced in portraiture of this period, as well as in the rare surviving garment. For additional intrigue, the fabric has been stamped all over with heated metal tools to give it a subtle pattern, a technique which is used abundantly on expensive garments from this period. With a hanging sleeve gown like this, the sleeves have openings to reveal another set of sleeves underneath. This is where those beautiful embroidered sleeves come in handy on the smock. But in the event of a plain smock without such show-worthy decoration, a pair of false decorated sleeves can be worn instead. We don't need those here, however. One perplexing omission from the song is the lack of a verse on ruffs. By the later part of the 16th century, these were starting to become more elaborate on the upper classes, having steadily grown into a garment of their own after their start as humble frills on the collars of gathered smocks earlier in the century. They could now be made from highly expensive bobbin laces, spangled, edged in silk blackwork, or wrought into intricate patterns. Having the ability to hire the specialists needed to launder and care for such finely made, expensive garments that sits right up against the neck and so is in frequent need of cleaning was in no uncertain terms a huge proclamation of wealth. But opulent or simple, the ruff or the simple collar was still an integral part of Tudor fashion. Perplexing, then, that one was not included in the outfit set. But perhaps, as we've theorized here, Lady Greensleeves already had a spectacular ruff herself. Over top of the gown sits a girdle of gold so red with pearls bedecked sumptuously, in fitting with the exquisite gold and jeweled girdles we see in portraiture. These are made to follow the lines of the bodice, peeking in front, and as is a common trick in period dress, this is held precisely in place with a couple of dressing pins. And we mustn't forget the jewelry, which Greensleeves is given plenty of throughout the song. Long strands of pearls were a particular favorite of Queen Elizabeth during this time, and, as a result, made them very fashionable amongst all women who could afford them. Necklaces, brooches, hairpins, rings, and earrings could all be chosen and matched to finish off the look. Over a dozen incredible makers were involved in the interpretation and construction of every piece of this outfit, from the gown to the slippers, and we followed them along during the whole making process. From how to interpret lyrics like "Thy smock of silk, both fair and white," when not even the queen herself was wearing smocks of silk, to, of course, the construction of the garments themselves. This whole journey was filmed for an entirely separate documentary, which is going to be released right here on this channel at this time next week, and I hope you're excited to see it, because this one is probably the biggest video we've ever done. Subscribe to the channel if you wish to catch that in your feed or to be notified, because it will probably live premiere, and I should very much love if you would join us for the hype. This video is part of the Greensleeves project, funded by the Society of Antiquaries. For more information, visit greensleevesproject.uk. Creeping on Greensleeves.